Let's knock this one out.
Yeah.
Do your
Opening
thing.
music.
Da 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 da.
That could be called up.
Da 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 da.
Don't get us copyright strike.
That's why I stopped. That's why I stopped after before like the 30-second mark.
Right. Yes, more like a 3-second mark.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Pameroki.
Welangati Kamen, welcome to the Eana Mokri podcast. We got a chunky episode here for you today. I'm going to use the word chunky, and I'm not going to be ashamed of it, because we got 4 blog posts as well as some other news. Here with me to break that down is Eana,
Kalti.
Awe,
Kalt
Willem,
Tsu'tey.
and I'm Dominic. So, first up, we have the Na'vi writing contest winners were announced. Congratulations to everybody who participated, but especially those who won. Any reactions from the crew?
Sek Elsinetra.
Oh, that was a segment. Done. Next.
I didn't get the memo
we're
on
done.
that one.
I think it's just very cool that the writing contest has resumed and that it's just a thing. Again, I've mentioned this before, but a lot of the only examples we have for a lot of vocabulary actually come from writing contest samples, and if they're published on Na'vi, that's good enough for me.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
So I have to say I didn't submit because I had no inspiration whatsoever. Which is like I'm kind of sad about in hindsight, but yeah.
I did not submit anything either.
I wanted to, but I didn't have any inspiration at all. I thought about it.
I didn't so much have a lack of inspiration as I had a lack of time to produce something that I would have been like proud of, I guess.
Right.
Ooh.
I know this feeling.
I submitted something, but it wasn't something I did like especially right for the contest. So I'm perfectly fine with not winning, and I didn't suspect I would win.
I think it's also very cool that there were winners outside of like the learnna'vi like Discord community. Like there's a couple of people here who I just don't recognize at all. So it's interesting that the Na'vi community is that broad, that it's not sort of just all in one place.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So anyway, if you have time, be sure to check out those posts on naviteri.org, Paul Frommer's blog. They are fantastic reading and reading comprehension practice. And moving on, we actually have more posts because Paul Frommer has been on fire recently, giving us new vocabulary and responding to emails and the like. So first up, we had a bunch of new words that I very much like, but I will give other people an opportunity to talk first.
There's just a lot, honestly.
Yes, and they are almost all useful.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, I'm saying useful now. Like, I don't mean that in a bad way for, like, other posts. I want to make that very clear. If I say useful, I mean useful, like, in general conversation. Like, if we are chatting at the end of an episode, these are words that I could actually see myself using. And I also find stuff like plant names and so on interesting, but, like, you don't really get a chance to use them often. So that is why I like this particular post.
Mm-hmm. What I appreciate about this post especially is all of the on derivations and associated words. It really opens up my mental model of what the word "on" like means in the first place, or like how the Na'vi sort of view that word. I don't know. Anytime that we have a word that's found as a root in like a bunch of other words, in my mind, I sort of generalize the meaning of that word a little bit more broadly.
Yeah.
And it sort of opens me up to like how the Na'vi think about their own language, I guess, or their own words within their language.
Yeah, exactly. Completely agree. Like, often, if you see the English translation, so for example, with ek aan, I don't know what the definition given was, something like barrier, but that like says very little about what the scope of the meaning is. So barrier could be like barrier, like a physical barrier. I put some crates in my door. That could be like a barrier. I don't know. Or like it could be like a mental barrier, or like a psychological barrier. I could be discouraging someone. It could also be a barrier.
Exactly.
And these derived words show that like these things are also considered barriers now.
Mm-hmm.
I also just like the explanation of the etymology of frustration as literally just being a goal barrier. And it's like, I feel that in my soul.
Right?
Yeah. I'm frustrated because there's this bug in my software I cannot fix. Yeah, that is like a barrier to my goals of having a correct program. Yeah, it's very fitting word.
I just like lakan as meaning both blocked or obstructed, and also just the like emotional state of frustrated.
Yeah, that might also hint that we like culturally view frustration in a different way. It's like a natural state of not being able to continue something.
Right.
It's like frustration is really seen as something negative. I feel like in general, like I'm frustrated, I'm angry about it. And maybe the Na'viE feel it more as something like, okay, I'm just blocked, but later I will be like unblocked, and it's like a natural phase in my getting unblockedness. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a very to that end, it is a very sort of productive view of frustration. It's like, okay, it's like identify what the obstruction is so we can like move past it.
Yeah.
It's a very mentally healthy model. Good job, Na'vi.
Yeah.
Two words I really liked from the post were ezan, because I just like the sound of it. I don't know, it just rings a bell for me. And and another one which filled a huge gap I felt was woon, because the saying in the movie, which was used like Ava will provide, felt like such a significant thing the Na'viE would say, and we never had a word for it. So having woon now and respectively eywa'eveng just is, I don't know, it just made me feel good and happy.
So woon I found a very special case here because I find it like this is actually one of the words that I just talked about where the scope is really not clear to me. So there was actually like only one example. Like we have eywa'eveng, of course, which was the main example. But like the example given was a good father provides food to his family. So like to provide is what foon means. But that is like really broad. That could be like overlap with ting, to give, or like it could overlap with veng, like to take care of. And I find this especially hard because I was going to translate this for the dictionary into Dutch, and it figures out that veng and woon have the same translation in Dutch, kind of.
Oof.
It's both zorgen voor, which just means take care of. And I mean, there are some like variant translations, but they have like different, like they're not transitive. So I mean, that's like you can work around it, but it's not so clear for me what the difference between veng and woon is.
To me, provide implies being the source of something or being responsible for the provision of something.
Right. Responsible for.
Like in this case, it's not just like it's not just dad. Like a good father provides food to his family. It's not just the father giving food to the family, but he's like the father might be the reason the family has food.
Yeah, right. So like it's like responsible for some necessary item. So if I would say I veng the children, then I take care of them. And if I say I woon the children, it's like I'll make sure they are here, like for a party or something.
Sort of, but in the case of woon, they'd be the indirect object because they'd be the one being provided for. Sort of implicit in the indirect object of sort of implicit in the indirect object of woon is the like adposition fb.
That's true.
Yeah.
I was also going to say another way to think about woon is I kind of see it as between veng and ding in a way, if that makes any sense whatsoever.
Yeah.
It's like a it's a kind of giving something, but without necessarily expecting without necessarily expecting anything else in return.
Right. There's a bit of selflessness to it. Okay, here's a crackpot theory. Voon is a slang of Vaum.
Oh.
Or the two words are somehow related. I have done zero research on this, so this is very much a, like, it's not even half-baked. Like, the ingredients are kind of just on my table, and I'm looking at them, and I'm like, I could make a cake out of that.
Etymology kitchen.
Yeah,
It's
maybe they
literally-
are. Because
the
like if you look at mom and Mayam, like Mayam only seems to me like mom with an A infix in it, like A. So why not?
That's the interesting thing. Sometimes you get these words that have what appears to be some kind of etymological pathway to them, but they didn't originally come from that, but they mean something similar enough that it makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, one counterpoint to this in general, like maybe it's a bit of like a boring counterpoint for you as an etymology person, is that I don't think that Paul often thinks about this way, with like differences between root words and how they could be related. So I've recently been like reading random articles about, for example, like Indo-European, like Indo-Proto-European, and like how completely different sounding words nowadays in English and French and Italian and Romanian and whatever, all are related to the same root words, what was like thousands of years ago.
Yeah.
Right.
And I don't think that one, Paul thinks about it in that way, and two, I don't really see any evidence. Like, even if we don't think about Paul, if we think it is a natural language, I don't see any evidence of like a proto language, because we don't know anything about dialects, we don't know anything about that kind of stuff. So
Yet.
That's why it's just a theory. A Na'vi theory.
Thanks for listening.
yeah.
In all seriousness, it probably just stems from me thinking about the dumb conlang that I'm working on, where very small vowel and consonant clusters have an ascribed meaning and then are then derived into like anything that's like adjacent to the idea.
So,
and I'm probably just looking for meaning in the wrong places.
So basically, an etymologist's wet dream is what you're saying.
Yes.
Okay. I'm interested.
I can tell you more about it after the podcast. Back on track. Speaking of etymology, I guess Ftanglan is another one of my favorites from this. Literally stop from occurring to prevent. Like, I don't know. That's just the kind of etymology in Na'vi that just makes me very happy.
Oh yeah, no. That I was gonna say that word is awesome, and I really am going to keep that in my very close by vocabulary.
Mm-hmm. I also appreciate that we got nisok, because I've been using nifgar, which actually has slightly different connotations for basically the same idea.
I mean, if I can be like nisok was in principle already known in the fact that it is like sok is an adjective and ne is productive for adjectives. Hence,
Yeah, but I didn't think about it because it wasn't a word.
right.
I'm really bad at thinking about the productivity space on adjectives into adverbs.
Ooh, yeah, no. I was just looking at nifgar versus nisok, and yeah, nifgar I would see more. For me, that seems to be something that would be ongoing, while nisok is something that ended.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, nisok is like a point in time, and nifkr is like nowadays. I feel like, let me actually look up the definition before I say
Yes,
stupid
that's
things.
that's basically it. It literally
Yeah.
comes from nifikr, like fikr this time, like
Like around these times.
yes, exactly.
Nifkr lu saspin. And not nisok lu saspin, because unfortunately we're all still stuck.
Yes, we
Yeah.
are still living that pandemic life. Also, just to cut it briefly, add, I totally agree with Eana. Azan is a beautiful sounding word, and it is very much a standout.
Mm-hmm.
So all in all, yes, I was extremely happy with this blog post.
Like, the word sounds so soft and so beautiful and has such a strong meaning when translated,
Yeah.
so it's also interesting to me.
One thing I found, like, if we can, like, spend even more time on this particular blog post, was the word kemuya. Because it just sounds extremely similar to kemuye. Like,
Yeah.
one would almost expect that kemuya would, like, over time go to kemuya.
Right. See, I saw those words. I saw Gemuya and Gemuyasi, and I'm like, didn't we already have those words? Like, I had to actually look them up and see, oh, no, it's a different word.
The fun thing is that also the meanings are very related. It's like unfair versus
Exactly.
dishonor. So you would actually say, like, I would assume if we are in this etymology train, that like maybe in 500 years or so, these words could have merged
Yeah,
with the intermediate
go on.
meaning.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe you want to say more about this.
No, not really. I just want to be like, yeah, give me that etymology theory.
No, it makes sense, right? I mean, it is almost the same word,
Yes.
and the meanings are similar, so you would expect them to merge at some point.
Final dumb etymology theory, Azan and Ngazik are related.
Okay, wait, what?
I could see it.
That's only 2 letters of, like, similarity.
But there's probably something about the like that as kind of syllable that implies like I guess Azan would be the root here, and then Ngazik would have arrived from it, and it has something to do with like holding off like against some sort of force or compulsion.
Yeah.
And like because Ngazik is like difficult, and it's like, oh, there's a lot of like force that I'm contending with.
You know what? I always thought of Ngazik as like related to Pasik. Because it's like, man, it's so hard.
Yeah.
I love it.
I like that too.
I find it.
If I can, because I think Willem, you mentioned that Karyu Pawl probably doesn't think about like root words and things like that. I think based off of the correspondence I've seen from posted in the forum and on leNa'vi, it seems that he goes with a feeling almost. Like he is like, I feel like this word means this.
Yes.
And so in a way it's kind of a root word, but it's not like a direct root word.
I mean, this is why we have faoi and ektu, right?
Yes. Correct.
Or what?
Yes.
What?
I found fnga also really.
Yeah.
Oh, that one's fun.
Or ak.
You're getting ahead.
Spoilers.
Spoilers,
Wow,
yes.
spoilers.
Yeah.
Let's get through the rest of the blog post so we can get to that.
Yeah.
There was also a very quick heads up post that Paul was going to be, an interview he was part of was going to be broadcast on BBC. Kind of gave us a little bit of a heads up. Apparently, not the entirety of the interview was shared, of course, because, heck, I'm an editor. I know that these things sometimes get trimmed down. But, did anybody here listen to that? Because I have not gotten around to it.
I did. Live. And I think that is like the nice part. Like, I switch on my normal TV with like normal radio receiver, and I can just listen to Karyu Pawl's voice, which is just like really, really cool. Also, of course, the content was cool, but I mean, I thought just the idea that he was being broadcast on like a well-listened, like a widely listened radio channel was also just really cool.
So what did they cover?
Well, mostly basics. I think not so much of the stuff that we would be super excited about. But I think he gave a really nice overview. He gave like some idea about the community, like how many people we have, like that people actually learning it, of course. But also we have a nice community. So yeah. Also that 2 people married actually.
So
he actually managed that to close off, which is a nice touch.
Right. Yeah. So basically, sort of just the general overview of, hey, the Na'vi language, it's real, it exists, I made it, and also like the community is great surrounding it, like basically that kind of whole thing.
Yeah, it was basically it was for a thing that was just on how languages kind of come to be as a thing.
Okay.
Why are there separate languages? Why are there so many of them? Why is it that dialects form? Things like that. And so I think it's cool that they did that with a constructed language point of view too.
Absolutely.
I always wonder how the editors of such a show end up with Karyu Pawl, or like with the idea of even taking constructed language into account. Like, how do you find that even?
Couldn't tell you. That's my very productive response.
Yeah, it's cool that they did, though. Thanks to the BBC.
Yeah. Absolutely. Any large scale exposure for the Na'vi language is always appreciated.
Yeah.
Next thing, final blog post for now, as of time of recording. A couple of days ago, we got a bit of a clarification on a long-standing question. So, as some of you may know, there are certain verbs within the language that we don't know if they are transitive or intransitive. Basically, we don't know if we can use them with a direct object or not, which, for all the not language nerds, this is kind of a big deal in Na'vi. And it concerns how we can use these verbs. And so we had literally a couple of verbs, pawm, to ask, and eyng, to answer or respond to something, where we didn't quite have a total confirmation on their transitivity and usage, so that was clarified for us, which is always appreciated. And then we also got a new expression for how to have that good old-fashioned "how you doing" conversation. And in this case, it's makto fyape, which is basically literally translates to "how you riding," which relates to makto zong, or "ride safely," which is sort of used as a parting option. Basically, ride safely. So this sort of just continues that metaphor and that connection that the Na'vi have between the idea of like how somebody is riding and sort of just how their life is going, which I thought was very cool.
I'm always happy.
I'm a big proponent of literally anything that breaks up Ngaru Pom.
Just wanted to say, like, anything that gives us a bit more diversity when it comes to greeting people or asking how they are is greatly appreciated. So.
I'm just like with the transitive and intransitive use, just to give maybe some background. So there's only a couple of verbs where we don't know, and eyng and pawm are definitely some of the most important ones because they come up very often in conversation. Of course, like I asked him, "Do you want to go to the store?" I don't know. That's a very common thing to say, and we basically didn't know how to say it properly. Like we had we could use it intransitively, which you can do with all verbs, but we didn't know if a transitive use was possible. So I think this is like the biggest thing of all the blog posts we've seen and we are covering in this episode. So that's why I'm excited about this.
It's a very old verb.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like the old verbs are usually the less clear verbs, kind of like counterintuitively, because many of the old verbs come from the olden times, where the entire idea of transitive and intransitive was not so clear yet, and many verbs didn't get confirmation. And all the verbs we get nowadays get published on learnna'vi, and Paul immediately writes with them what the structure is, so if they are transitive or not. So usually the older verbs are the verbs that are used a lot. The old verbs, those are the ones that we usually don't know. So it's very nice that Paul is coming around to actually providing clarification on these things. So I'm very happy about that. Now I just hope that he's also getting around to the other verbs that are still on the list, central push.
For context, I know I've spoken with some of the other members of the community, and whenever they send him emails, they've been slowly trying to work in all of these mystery transitivity verbs into their questions just to get Paul to slip and accidentally reveal the transitivity of something without us explicitly saying, "Paul, please give us the transitivity of this."
Yeah, I think this is also like a hard question for Paul to answer, because
Yes.
he needs to figure out what sounds best in his mind. Probably he might not have thought about these issues before. Plus, he needs to check probably all of his archives to see if he has said something about it before, and like if any of his example sentences already covered it. Like, let's say that he at one point used it transitively, then he doesn't, like, he probably wants to just not contradict it at this point. So I can see why these questions are really hard for Paul as well.
Yes. I believe, didn't we cover this on a previous episode, though, where we sort of recently, there was a question that was asked that went against something that was said before, and he's like, oh, I need to meditate on this for a while.
Oh, yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Did we cover that? I don't know. In any case, there were like several. Like, now that have been so many emails to Paul, of course, there's also lots of discussion and like lots of new grammar points that we are seeing.
Yep.
So
speaking of which,
yeah, go ahead.
Nice.
That's a very nice one.
Yeah.
yes, you.
Oh, yeah, that's mine. All right.
It's time.
It's time. I've had some correspondence with Karyu Pawl over the past couple of weeks, mostly just some questions that come up, and one thing that I've always wanted to know is more interjections, because I love being able to intersperse leNa'vi interjections throughout my life, because it's fun. And this email included a word for, or an equivalent to, our ouch. And
A pain response.
yeah, effectively. If you stub your toe or something, then the word is ah.
Yep.
Diphthong.
AK.
Yeah. Ah.
Ah.
And it's like, I'm like, I say that already.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I can imagine Karyu Pawl's in his home and he's like, damn it, I need to answer this question. He just like kicks his desk and goes, ah. Okay, that'll do.
Yeah, right. Well, the funny thing is I did get I actually did get a response from him, because this is a question that I asked a while back, and now that we all have time, since we're all locked in our apartments or houses or whatever, he got back to me about it. What he wanted to do was look at cultures around the world and see what their pain response is.
Yeah.
Is it ow? Is it ouch? Is it something different?
Mm-hmm.
And I think he said he came up with ah was because it just sounded like something that anybody would say if they hurt themselves.
Yeah.
We also,
I feel like it's also very much in line with with at, which we are for oops.
Yeah.
It sort of seems like the sort of go-to kind of like the very sudden kind of knee-jerk interjections that the Na'vi would use.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. In that same email, we got it's not too much of a like brand new word or anything as earth-shattering as that, but we also got some info about how you would answer the question of how many of these things do you want. And it's basically, it depends on the situation. If you are...
As always, it depends.
Yeah, pretty much. It depends on the situation you find yourself in. If you're in a not particularly stressful scenario, just kind of normal, then it's one way. And if you're in like a military situation, you might just answer with the number, because, you know, if you spend the time saying more than that, you might just get shot. So I would explain all of them, but there were a lot.
Yes.
There were like 12.
For more, go to the learnna'vi.org forums.
Yeah, pretty much.
Check out the language updates subsection, which is always a good read, honestly, because it's just official correspondence with KP and basically things shared there are canon.
And I will say that will be shared on the blog at some point, but he gave me the okay to share it, so I figured I'd share it early.
Excellent.
Okay, yeah. So speaking about ak and other interjections, so 2 points. Point one is we still need one for surprise, because I always say just ah or something like that.
Right.
my own proposal would be oo, but I think it would be a single vowel because it's like this is so common to have like a sound you make. Like someone says, "Oh yeah, did you know where he went? He went climbing in a tree." I don't know, and you're like, ah. And I think almost all natural languages have a sound like this. We have tolel, but that's like very long and not really a sound. So that's one I still want.
We have, I mean, if I remember correctly, wasn't nang used by itself in one of the comics?
In the comic, yeah.
Uh-oh.
My way.
I did not like that.
I'm here to be the dissenting voice.
Maybe we should quickly go to my second point, which is Willem's quick tip for sounding like a Na'vi when you're speaking Na'vi, which is use instead of because the Na'vi sound for I'm hesitating is not it's So if you're like, let's say that you don't know what word to use, which obviously happens very often when I'm speaking. So I'm like, kalt what of course so Willem.
Yeah.
I just had to think about my own name, which is great.
Yeah.
But basically, if you say
says on its own,
then it's like that sounds weird to me. If you say it's like I'm just thinking, and I find somehow that makes you sound really Na'vi-ish. I don't know.
Working in that interjection in particular, the I'm thinking interjection really does immerse you in a language very quickly. One of the things I did, I feel like I've already said this before, but when I was learning Japanese, I really tried to work in eto whenever I was like thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And that sort of kept me in the headspace of thinking about Japanese rather than every time I'd go like, I'm sort of back in my default English brain. Mm-hmm. But when I'm trying to hold a conversation in Na'vi and I forget a word and I say, it sort of just like keeps me in that headspace. It doesn't snap me back and forth.
Yeah, exactly. I completely agree with that. Okay.
We did it?
I guess
that's the language updates. Did we miss anything?
I think we're done.
Okay.
Spoofy.
What about the spoofy?
It just made me think of that.
What?
The spoofy is great.
The spoofy is great, but we have other great things such as how things happened in outer space that were very exciting over the last 48 hours.
Oh, really?
And I know just the person to go to get excited about things going on in space over the last 48 hours. It's Tawe with space news.
Roll the transition music.
Yeah, where's the jingle?
Yeah.
I'm not going to make a jingle for that.
Fair enough.
But if we make one, will you play it?
Yes.
Aha!
I'm just not going to make it.
So, as many people probably already know, because there were several million people that watched it streamed live on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
Just at the time of our recording, which is the weekend of the 30th.
Yeah.
May 30th and May 31st marked the first launch of a spacecraft from United States soil since the space shuttle program was discontinued. And specifically, it was the first launch that contained crew and docked with the International Space Station.
Because we've been slipping in the space launches.
Yeah, I still question every once in a while who decided to retire the shuttle. But anyways...
but the new shuttle, the thing is though, this new shuttle is way better than the ones we were using before anyway, though, because it's totally a lot of it's reusable.
Yeah, I trying to remember. I know the first booster is reusable completely. I can't remember if the second is or not, or if it burns up on re-entry like everything else usually does.
Yeah, the second booster detached really high up.
Yeah, and that.
I specifically remember watching the first booster land. That was really exciting.
Oh yeah, no, that was. There was even though I was not directly involved in any of it, I was still nervous for the whole thing.
Right.
Is I'm like, if this lands and they can recover it, because let's remember here, it's an autonomously guided booster. There was no human control in there, and it landed on an autonomous ship that also has no human control involved.
Yeah, and just to provide some context with that, I don't know if any of y'all have ever tried to like move a boat around, but like a boat staying in one position or like even vaguely in a single position is very difficult. Like objects on water kind of just do their own thing.
That ocean
it's in the ocean. Yeah. Like this isn't some placid lake. This is friggin' the ocean.
Yeah, plus if I remember when it landed, I think it was raining or storming, wasn't it?
Yes, yes it was.
Which is even more impressive.
Yeah. But because... like the math involved to basically have that trajectory in mind, we're like, okay, given like weather conditions, the launch angle, the rotation of the Earth, whatever other factors that need to come in, that they could first of all just get the booster to go, like figure out where the booster is going to go in the first place, and then catch it more or less. Because I mean, it can guide itself a little bit, but they have to be within a rough area. Like if it's 50 miles off one way or the other, like the ship can't the water ship can't correct that much, and the airship probably can't correct that much either.
Yeah, exactly.
I also really appreciated during the launch where they're like, okay, we're at abort phase such and such, and if they have to bail on this now, they're going to be landing like off the coast of North Carolina, or like, okay, now they'd be landing in like off the coast of Ireland, or like they had like all these contingency like locations ready to go.
Oh yeah, no, that's the fun part about especially like spacecraft design nowadays, and especially what SpaceX had to do is that those things have so many contingency plans built in. Like a lot has to go wrong for it to not work.
I mean, if you're blasting me into the stratosphere, I would hope you'd have those too. Like, if I was in the pilot seat.
If I had a literal rocket strapped to my butt, I kind of want some kind of protection. But, like, for a good example, actually, I was watching the ISS docking earlier today, which went off without a hitch, which was amazing, too, because most of that is automatic as well.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But one of the astronauts that was on the capsule, they had to put their suits on and everything just in case it depressurized.
Oh, yeah.
They noticed that there was a small dip in one of the pressurizations of the suit, and they were like, it's still well within what we consider to be safe. Mm-hmm. But this thing is there, and we want you to be aware of it.
Yeah. So, that would first of all, that would freak me out.
Oh yeah, no, they were like, I mean, definitely.
They were professionals about it, but I would be like, oh my god, I want to go home.
Just rocking back and forth in the capsule.
Yeah.
But the fact that they knew that there was that small dip, and the fact that they knew that it was still safe, as well as knew exactly where to check to see what might have caused it, was pretty impressive to me.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, they asked the commentary on the launch stream. They were talking about how like they've drilled like every step of this process on Earth, of course, repeatedly, to the point where it's like they sort of know every single step that they need to take well in advance, and they've practiced every single step. They've practiced what they do in case it's not working. They practice what they do in case it is working. Like everything, it's such a carefully orchestrated event, and it's sort of beautiful to just watch it unfold.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what I also find really beautiful about it is like not only the launch itself, but also the way it's reported in the sense that they have like overlays, visuals. They have like a live altitude and speed thing. Like they have even live feeds from like even during the launch. They have like live feeds from it in the cockpit and outside the vehicle, and So it's like if you compare it to like the old launch, it's just like one camera, like a few cameras on the ground pointing up into like where the rocket is. But right now you get like angles from like everywhere. It's like how do they even manage that?
I love the stage separation cameras. Those are my personal favorite.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like they had those with, I believe they had those with a lot of the rocket launches that still use staged rockets, like the Apollo missions, but not that quality.
I also appreciated that the interfaces that the pilots were using was also just extremely modern. Like, I mean, they were just, tactile, well polished GUIs.
Oh yeah.
Basically, instead of all the other footage I've seen of like some of the older shuttles where it's like they're basically piloting a glorified plane with like just a bunch of like analog switches and stuff.
I mean, to be fair, that's kind of what the shuttle was. It was basically a space plane.
Right.
Yeah.
I want to ride in the space plane.
But yeah, I agree. I even commented on it that it looked like all of the sci-fi space travel that I've seen. These big monitors displaying all of this information, but in a clean and easy to see way. That was still wasn't just monospace. Here's the stuff you need to know.
Yeah.
Or like
the inside of a Tesla, which is very unsurprising.
I was gonna say, who do you think designed it? But that's the cool thing is so one thing that I did want to comment on just briefly, because I know one thing that a lot of people, myself included, were a little bit leery about was that this is a privately funded spacecraft that NASA is basically just using. And the thing is all of the modernization, all of the stuff we're talking about, all of the risks that were taken, like this booster, NASA probably wouldn't have been able to do that, and that's only because federal agency red tape is really hard to get around. And you basically have to, since the federal agency is funded by taxpayer dollars, they have to be accountable towards them and be able to say, this is what we spent your money on. And they don't really want to say, we spent X billions of dollars trying to get this thing working.
Right.
But I think this is kind of the way it's supposed to work, in the sense that, like, I think that a commercial company, like a company could never have done like the original Apollo missions, because it's like way too risky and way too complicated, like scientifically.
Yeah.
To get like investors for. But at some point, so the government needs to do that. But at some point, private people can take over parts, like starting over the simple parts, like simple, of course, quote unquote, still rocket science, but the simpler part, so that like the government can focus itself on like the actual new research questions that come up.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's that thing, and the thing is too with the Apollo missions, for example. Even though those were huge scientific advancements, they had a very political motivation.
Yes.
It's much easier to convince everybody that this is a good thing to spend money on if you can make it a political reason rather than a scientific reason, unfortunately. At least here in the US, that tends to be the case.
Oh, I think that's everywhere.
Yeah, probably.
Why do you think that like the European Space Agency has so little budget?
Fair enough. But that's why the commercial side of it, while I would definitely have preferred that it be like a countrywide thing that we just all agreed was a good idea, kind of hard to do, sadly. So commercial spaceflight is kind of how it's going to go, and in the long run I'm hoping that it turns out really well. I'm hoping I can buy a ticket at some point.
I think that'll happen within our lifetime.
I'm like ambivalent about that. It's like, on one hand it would be really nice. On the other hand, this takes like gigantic amounts of resources. And if like random people for semi-reasonable prices can start buying just tickets to go to space for a day or so. That is like really bad for the environment.
I'll stop myself here because otherwise I'll go for another hour and a half. But there are ways to get around that work very well, at least theoretically. And yes, that does include an actual space elevator.
I love space elevator. But yeah, well, the other thing is, to sort of build on that point without going too in depth, the more commonplace something is, the more eyes and brains will be on innovating that field.
Because, like you said, it takes up a lot of resources. But that also being said, the fuels that are used, depending, I know some of the fuel was kerosene, but they also use things like liquid oxygen.
Yes.
And those, as far as I'm aware, thinking chemically here, they're not going to cause too much pollution aside from like water vapor.
Right. All right, and to close out the episode, returns our Na'vi language conversation practice segment. I know I am personally very rusty, so I will probably make a lot of mistakes. We all will, but that's okay, because we're all learning and practicing together.
Yep.
To that end, we need a word of the cast, so I'm just going to skim Na'vi Teri real fast for it.
Pawm, sarak.
Pawm? Sure.
Didn't we have that one?
Besa pawm lungaru.
It's Srakatsuwe Hiwahau.
Sultana pawm.
Taluna efungain. Alunta ke polt net
Ke Tsunga people enetam. People cast away, yeah.
Tam sahe.
Eywa'eveng kolanaway.
そうだね。eyng makto fyape. Engari to.
Yes, it's a to pawm. Wedi niltsan. In oe nit an nifker. Sla. Efu oe nitram.
Kosman.
Terram efu oi tasom. Ma frapo che stetne pawm che soli aiwe doluna tisomil weti ekefu ngain nit an.
Tisomil ikafu som. Slat.
Srane. Tisomil weti ekefu som. Nilau.
Slam.
Stolam ngat kolanaway. Stolam ngat ngalweti.
Salut de pawm slag. Ketsolam, sakur.
Zolene
leNa'vi.
Bivil sla.
Put ewe san stolam ngalweti.
Stolam ngalweti.
So.
Put ewe san.
Where do you
Tisomil weti ekefu som.
Srane.
Stolam ngalweti.
Ting är sig nog för sätt spelar futa vad jag eltu haha.
Kefto.
Nej.
Smonu weru tsati efu.
Aha, weruneteng.
Men engari eltu hera how. Strak.
Spelar futa lun lu fois set lu amt o mau.
Tam.
Sa grr wedi tok neu I vahau ulte eltu niteng neu I vahau.
Miherahau.
Tam. Tis yung well sat.
Tam, hej alvej.
Na'vi.
Okay.
Sick.
Drums, do your thing.
Okay.
Talun hivar. Okay. Taluna fi podcaste ngopa fi ulu o. Ulte sunu wedu.
Sådan.
Strane, sinu vedu ni thing. Så parte wene.
When anything.
Ulte. Spil vel futta frapolu sunu sao.
Nilam.
Frapolu
Lì'fya.
tok fit sengi.
Lì'fya.
God.
Kähä sunu vedu. Fi podcast eli wia.
Oi, hase sivi kefjak.
Okay, Kelly.
Hoe put hanker sla no leo oi people filuti lu husa how lufbi mapu
Spil vel futta aisahik bylt esan kähäsik.
skakep
Nivinkap. Noleo pivelt net an ne ul. Slä im luoe na lorejua on nampi. Ut pilwel futta aili u a neo pivelt eoe kietiva. Ha no neo nivu. Srane, uite neo oe leki vatemtsat. Sle lungesik.
Räf nu.
Ha tongwer futa sunguel aile ud a. A sunu weru a solunu weru. Launce. SpaceX.
Oh, launch. So lang.
Soloha. Keomom. Well net an.
Wedi ni thing. So ha well zusau kurti.
Srane. Teasi.
Takemalu holum tausip
Teasi weru fua sautute tikankem siausiteng.
Srane.
weru nitang
Sa angal te kin. What?
Wel det. Har teia soli weru net an fua nensat.
Multe. Frapporulu den at slanten.
Tam. Sat no leo pivelt
answer
Det är stang bifelt rot Svart bifelt
Varko.
Tam. Se srekra SpaceX launce soli.
Strane, lansoli.
Fekole. Well, olin nolin airelid arosik a olent u a futa feke heavy falcon nemun. Ulte teia soli werunet aneteng futa fwa fwa te kanken siu SpaceX zan ul net an ftetsivun tivung futa makto aisute ne ISS.
Strane. Kosmana rel arusik limu.
Kes mon weruf beloit. Saulu nolin wel awa rally alusik anga sa tausep a kangangangsi. Multe ne
He kangham weti.
Sana, kangangangsi, kangangang, ne ia sa tausep zo.
Strane.
Sau lyssnar sank, ja.
Strane.
Komum tänkta ferrella rusik lupum a kangal.
Puma peleu.
Kitsolamite.
Mariana, srake ngal kolan sa relita lusik?
Perelit.
Veru du ja. Nimun titelt eko.
Tarella musik teri tsatausia palu Falcon Heavy.
Strane.
Saulu tenga alal alusik srak.
Veru ja.
Strane.
Tam. Mariana,
Veru
ngapult
Oliver.
esan nolin wel alalit alusik. Sek, kefja?
Strane.
Tam. Ultepult EOE san fketok sa alal alusik nolin wel teri ayalo kangangan soli
Aha.
tausip. Ulte weet te pawm lu srake sa elal alusik lu pum a kangal
Akana.
kan kolan
Akanwal.
Strane.
Kehe. Kef Biluel zat?
tam
Taluna Falcon Heavy Solo ulte fraisute soha nit an.
tam keumum denkta peulu falcon heavy salut tausip srak
Srane. Fekole mezezetam.
mesisitam tam
Ulte sunuwer nit an hua ninsat. Taluna flole ne wot.
c'est sinot san ma SpaceX
Srane.
SpaceX
SpaceX.
Nip hasunu weru fwa tsatausip tsatausip alu Yayo aku u.
Yayo aku up.
Jij.
Alu
Ah,
faufai.
staan het.
Ah.
Dit is nog staan.
Yayo aku u.
Sneaky.
Slä. Dragon lu kuupa jajo ni tänker jag.
Ningai. Go ta hausip holum tram tunfgo people talu alu ikran.
Ah, exempelt
Sådan.
Kanu.
Ikran lefnga.
Ikran lefnga. Soon.
Asiahasi epfa.
Ningai.
Se son ett samma frapo. Zene oi hasesi vise.
Der.
Och anything.
Spiller over anything.
Och
Ja.
efu och hack.
Mi är fången.
Och F1.
Jag får oi nitram.
Heshul dog hesengi.
Ke fu oi ngeng fu ohak. Weri frau zo.
Sura.
Strane.
Sist nog staan. Werka.
Sura e aun weri.
Så sana fja och appelt
Stunwi. All right, with that, we're going to wrap up the podcast. Thank you for joining us. As always, you're welcome to subscribe to us on the YouTube or podcast listening platform of your choice. With that, we're going to sign off. Hej allebei.
Hej allebei.
Hello, bye.
Hello, bye.
Du.
Du.